My name is Camille Hartley. I'm 31 years old. And this is the story of how I was publicly humiliated at my father's birthday party. Only to return with a truth that would destroy everything they thought they knew about me. The night of my father's 60th birthday was supposed to be just another formal charade. I stood in front of the towering glass doors of Lucille, an elite rooftop restaurant where reservations required connections, not just credit. Golden light shimmered through the glass, bouncing off the marble floor and casting a blurred reflection of myself. A woman in a black velvet dress, polished heels, and a clutch I hadn't used since my last law gala. On the outside I looked composed. But inside, I felt like a child again. Small, invisible, and terribly out of place. I wouldn't have come if it hadn't been for Aunt Loretta. She was the only one who ever truly saw me in this family. She called a week ago, her voice soft but urgent. Camille, I know you hate being around them. But he's still your father. Just stop by, say hello. You don't even have to stay. So here I was, standing alone in front of a venue I didn't belong in, about to enter a celebration I wasn't welcome at. The moment I stepped inside, my ears were filled with the low hum of jazz and the buzz of champagne-fueled laughter. The restaurant had been transformed into a playground for the elite. Waiters in tuxedos, crystal chandeliers, a custom ice sculpture shaped like a lion, the family crest carved boldly into its chest. It was never just a birthday with my father. It was a performance. A spectacle to remind everyone that Richard Hartley wasn't just a man. He was a brand. The head of Hartley Financial Holdings, a father of two, and a pillar of the community. He had always curated his image with obsession. Tonight was no exception. I made my way to the check-in table where sleek, silver name tags lay in neat alphabetical rows. My fingers paused at each one. Max Hartley. Olivia Monroe. Loretta Carr. Familiar names. Then mine. Camille Hartley. But something was off. Below my name, in delicate, almost calligraphic handwriting, were two small words that made my heart sink like a stone in deep water. The disappointment. First, I thought it was some cruel coincidence. A joke. A mistake. Then I heard it, that laugh. Low, throaty, satisfied. I didn't even have to turn around to know who it was. Margot. My stepmother. She stood behind me, a tall crystal flute of Merlot in one hand. Her free hand resting delicately on the shoulder of a passing waiter like he was her personal accessory. Her blonde hair was pinned in perfect waves, her eyes sharp as glass. "Oh, Camille," she said sweetly, her voice laced with venom. "You look tense. It was just a little joke. Don't be so sensitive." She smiled, and I swear I could feel the chill of every time I was left out, every time I was spoken down to, wrapped inside that one smirk. My grip tightened on the tag. "A joke," I echoed, forcing a smile. "Of course." But inside something snapped. This wasn't the first time Margot had humiliated me. But it would be the last. When my parents divorced, I was 9. Dad remarried within a year. To Margot, a woman with 2 children from a previous marriage. Max and Olivia. From day one they were the golden trio. My father's attention, once mine alone, evaporated. At first I tried to fit in. I volunteered to help cook dinner, clean up, play nice. But it didn't matter. Margot had already decided my role. The extra. Problem. The disappointment. I was punished for things Max did. Expected to understand, when Olivia's lavish ballet trips meant canceling my weekend with Dad. I became a ghost in my own home. Still, nothing prepared me for what happened when I turned 17. My mother had worked double shifts for years, squirreling away every cent into a college fund for me. It wasn't much, maybe enough for 2 years at a decent university, but it was her dream. Then one day I checked the account. I confronted my father. Screamed, cried, demanded answers. And you know what he said? "She'll understand one day." Olivia's scholarship fell through. Her future was at risk. And just like that, he had drained the only financial safety net I had, without even telling me. He told me he'd make it up to me. He never did. So I worked. Multiple jobs, sleepless nights, student loans I'm still repaying. I didn't ask for help. Not once. And now, after everything, they still thought it was funny to label me the disappointment. I looked back at the tag, set it down carefully, then turned back to Margot. You really went through the trouble of writing that? She blinked. It's not a big deal. I leaned in, my voice like silk. Then you won't mind when I tell everyone who wrote it. She stiffened, but I didn't wait for a response. I strode toward the center of the room, toward the man of the hour, my father, surrounded by laughter and legacy. He saw me and his expression faltered. Camille, he said, looking around nervously. I didn't know you were coming. I bet you didn't, I replied smoothly. But I'm glad I did. I picked up a glass of champagne, gently clinked it with my fingernail, and raised my voice just enough to cut through the chatter. May I have your attention for a quick toast? Conversations faltered. Faces turned. I felt their curiosity like heat on my skin. To my father, I said, raising my glass. A man who built an empire. A man who throws the best parties. And who taught me one of life's greatest lessons. My father looked confused. Margot was frozen. Max smirked. Olivia looked bored. I smiled wider. Thank you, I continued, for teaching me how to survive when the people who were supposed to love me chose to ignore me instead. For reminding me that family isn't blood. It's who stands beside you when no one else does. Murmurs stirred. The room began to shift. And to Margot, I added, my voice growing colder. For tonight's name tag. Really, you have impeccable handwriting. Her face drained of color. My father muttered. Camille, not now. Oh, but I think now is perfect. I finished the champagne in one sip, set the glass down and said one last thing. Enjoy your party. It's the last time you'll host one here. Then I walked out, head high, heart racing. And not a single person dared follow me. Because what they didn't know. I owned the building. The cold night air hit me like a wave as I stepped onto the street outside Lucille. My heels clicked against the pavement, steady and deliberate. My heart was still hammering in my chest, but it wasn't from fear. It was something else, freedom maybe. Or rage that had finally found its voice. For years I had held my tongue. Bit back every cutting remark. Chose silence instead of scenes. Tonight I chose differently. And they had no idea what was coming. I didn't take a cab. Walked. Past the valet who awkwardly offered to call my car. Past the hotel across the street where I had booked a penthouse for one night. Not because I needed to, but because I could. I walked because every step helped me remember. I wasn't the disappointment. I was Camille Hartley. And while they were busy flaunting their status inside a restaurant, I had been building a life they would never understand. I reached the hotel entrance and slipped inside, nodding politely at the doorman. Good evening, Miss Hartley. Smiled. Evening, James. Could you let the staff know I'll be needing the documents tomorrow morning as discussed? He nodded. Of course. Upstairs in the suite, I kicked off my heels and stared out the window. From here, I could still see the glowing rooftop across the street. My father's party. My family. The people who had taken so much from me, and never once looked back. They didn't know the truth yet. Not about me. Not about the building they were standing in. Had taken years. And no, I didn't do it for revenge. Not at first. I did it because it was the only way I knew how to survive. After college, I scraped together every dollar I could. I started small. Admin jobs, research assistant gigs, nights editing grant applications for grad students. Anything that paid. Anything that helped me move forward. I wasn't just climbing a ladder, I was building my own. By 25, I had landed a paralegal position at a mid-size law firm downtown. By 27, I'd passed the bar and was climbing the ranks faster than anyone expected. I was ruthless, efficient, and quiet. Just the way I had learned to be. But I didn't stop there. While Max was spending his days networking, in corporate hand-me-down roles from Dad, and Olivia was launching a luxury candle line with no business model, I was investing. I bought my first commercial property, a run-down warehouse, and flipped it with every cent I had. Then another. Until one day 2 years ago, a certain building in the heart of the city went up for sale. It wasn't cheap. But by then I didn't need cheap. I had partnered with a private equity firm led by a woman I met during a conference in London. We bonded over whiskey and bad exes. She liked my plan. She backed me. And just like that, I bought the very rooftop my father now thought was his playground. It had taken everything. Sleepless nights, endless negotiations, a loan that made me nauseous. But I did it. Quietly. No press. No announcement. Because I didn't need applause. I needed closure. Back then, I wasn't even thinking about using it. I thought I might renovate, rebrand it into a private lounge, or flip it again in a few years. But when I saw the reservation under Hartley Holdings, something inside me shifted. They booked the venue under the company name, never realizing I was the final signature on the lease agreement. The final approver of the event. They had walked into my building. And tomorrow they would find out. Picked up my phone. Aunt Loretta had texted. "Camille, what happened? I'm proud of you. But I'm worried. Call me." I smiled softly. She didn't deserve to be caught in the blast. "Don't worry. I'm okay. I'll explain soon." Another message blinked in, my father. "Call me. You crossed the line tonight." I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I called the building manager. "Mr. Stevens," I said when he picked up, groggy from sleep. "Sorry to bother you so late. I'd like you to pull the surveillance footage from the event tonight. Everything from 7 p.m. to close. Please also prepare the standard breach of conduct letter. I'll have edits for you in the morning." There was a pause. "Absolutely, Miss Hartley. Do you want the vendor list updated as well?" "Yes," I said. "And revoke Hartley Holdings event privileges effective immediately." When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. The next morning, I was already awake before sunrise. I went through emails, signed off on a few leasing documents for a new office space I was developing, and reviewed the draft letter from the legal team. The footage showed everything. Margot placing the name tag at the table, then laughing with a waiter as she pointed to it. She wasn't even trying to hide it. They never expected me to have access to that footage. Because they never imagined I could own anything they couldn't control. I had the staff prepare a formal letter, addressed directly to Hartley Holdings and Richard Hartley, outlining conduct violations under the venue's dignity and discrimination clauses, policies I had insisted on implementing after becoming the owner. The letter was professional, cold, unmistakable in tone. Due to repeated instances of disrespectful and demeaning behavior observed during the private event on date, the management team of Lucille has made the decision to sever all future event ties with Hartley Holdings, effective immediately. By noon, I had signed and sealed the envelope. By 2 p.m. it was delivered, along with a flash drive containing the full video. That evening, as I returned home, my phone rang again. It was my father. Again. I didn't answer. I needed him to sit with what he'd done, to truly feel it. Not just the embarrassment, not just the revoked privileges, but the truth that his daughter, the one he discarded, had been holding the keys all along. The next few days were quiet, too quiet, which in my family always meant something was brewing. No more missed calls from my father. No follow-up messages from Margot. Even Olivia, usually quick to post Instagram stories flaunting their latest brunches or designer gifts from Dad, had gone suspiciously silent. It was eerie, honestly, like the calm before a storm. And then the letter came. A thick ivory envelope, hand-delivered to my apartment. It was from Richard Hartley himself. Not the father who used to sit on the floor building Lego castles with me as a child. No, this was Richard the CEO. Slick, formal, emotionally detached. His handwriting, as always, was flawless. "Camille, I received your letter. And the footage. I won't defend Margot's behavior. Was out of line. I've spoken to her. But you didn't have to humiliate me in front of my guests. You made your point. I suggest we meet for lunch to discuss how to move forward from this. Let's not drag this into something larger than it needs to be. Dad. I read it twice. Then a third time. Not once did he apologize. Not once did he say he was sorry for everything that led to this moment, for draining my college fund, for standing by while Margot treated me like dirt, for choosing everyone but me. He just wanted it smoothed over, fixed, handled. Because that's what my father always did with problems. He didn't feel them, he solved them. Preferably behind closed doors where no one could see the cracks in the glass. But I was done being a problem to be solved. I tossed the letter aside, unopened my laptop, and began typing. Not a reply. Not yet. Instead, I pulled up an old folder I hadn't looked at in months. Hartley Financial. Internal audit. Unofficial. Because see, my father didn't just humiliate me growing up. He had also underestimated me in the business world. A year earlier, I'd been approached by a close friend of mine, Naomi, a financial analyst who used to work for one of Hartley Financial's competitors. She had stumbled on something strange during a consulting gig. Offshore transfers, misreported quarterly earnings, hush-hush payouts to a foreign shell company. She wasn't sure what it meant. But when she showed me, I recognized the patterns immediately. Hartley Financial was cooking its books. And not just slightly. If the SEC got wind of this, it wouldn't just ruin the company's reputation. It could send people to jail. At first, I didn't want anything to do with it. I had spent years trying to heal from my father's absence and his emotional manipulation. I didn't want to be pulled back into his orbit, even as a threat. But now he was the one coming to me, trying to smooth things over. So I called Naomi. Hey, I said, voice steady. You still have that folder? There was a pause on the line. Then, you ready to use it? Almost. I just need to tighten a few screws. For the next week, I pored over the data again. I connected dots Naomi had missed. Cross-referenced names, wire transfers, obscure real estate purchases hidden under dummy corporations. And I found it. The real secret. Margot was on the payroll. Not in an official capacity, of course. But through a side company registered in the Cayman Islands, she had been receiving monthly deposits for consulting services. Services that didn't exist. They were funneling money to her, most likely from the same pool my college fund had once been part of. It was everything I needed. Everything I had never asked for, but now couldn't unsee. So I did what any seasoned corporate attorney would do. I prepared a dossier. It was clean, indexed, time-stamped. I included copies of the surveillance footage from the party, the name tag, Margot's smirk, the humiliation, and then the paper trail that led to the buried money, all tied up in a neat little bow. Then I did something even I didn't expect. I walked into the Hartley Financial headquarters. I wore a gray pantsuit. No makeup. No theatrics. Just calm. Reception froze when they saw me. Miss Hartley, the woman at the front desk stammered. Do you have an appointment? I do now, I said with a cool smile. Tell Mr. Hartley his daughter is here. And she brought an early birthday present. 15 minutes later I was in his office. He stood when I entered, looking older than I remembered. Not vulnerable but tired. Maybe even scared. Camille, he said. I didn't expect you to. I placed the folder on his desk. I know everything, I said. He looked down at it, frowning. I'm not here to ask for an apology, I continued. I'm not here for some cathartic father-daughter moment. I'm here to give you a choice. His eyes snapped to mine. I saw the flicker of dread cross his face. Choice, he said. Yes. You can either step down quietly, or I bring this to the board. And then the authorities. He opened the folder and began to skim. As he reached the pages outlining Margot's fake consulting checks, I saw the color drain from his cheeks. She didn't, he began. She did. And you let her, I said coldly. Just like you let her steal from me. Just like you let her twist your perception of me until I was just the disappointment. He sat down hard in his chair, rubbed his forehead. What do you want? Pause. And for the first time in a long time I let myself breathe. I want you out. I want you to resign. Quietly. You'll say it's for health reasons. You'll recommend a successor. And then you'll disappear. If you do that, I won't release the dossier. I'll let the company survive. I won't destroy everything you built. He didn't speak. Picked up my bag. You have 48 hours. Then I left. And I swear, the air outside smelled sweeter than it had in years. It didn't take him 48 hours. The next morning the news broke. Richard Hartley to retire from Hartley Financial Holdings citing health reasons. The headline was everywhere. Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, even the local paper that had once called him the Empire Father. There were no interviews. No press conference. Just a neatly worded public statement signed by the board. He was out. And just like that, the man who once made me feel like I didn't exist had been forced into silence. By me. But that wasn't the end. Because the thing about exposing a house of cards is that it all comes down. Margot tried to play damage control. She released a statement of her own, posing as the grieving spouse of a tired man who had given everything to his career. She even staged a photo shoot in their home, standing somberly beside my father in a silk robe, the two of them looking like martyrs. But Margot was sloppy. Always had been. And once the finance world got a whiff of a scandal, the sharks circled fast. Within a week, an anonymous tip was filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Within 2, Margot's shell company in the Cayman Islands was frozen. Investigators dug deeper and found forged invoices, fake consultant contracts, even backdated documents signed in my father's name. By the end of the month, subpoenas were being issued. Max tried to stay quiet. Too quiet. But someone leaked emails tying him to property deals funded by the same slush account. Olivia's wedding planner was arrested for wire fraud. Turns out the custom floral imports were a laundering front. Her big day was cancelled before the cake was even baked. The Hartley family was crumbling. And me. I stayed silent. I didn't speak to the press. I didn't gloat. I didn't post cryptic messages on social media or brag to my colleagues. I just kept working. Because I wasn't trying to become famous. I just wanted peace. A few weeks later, Aunt Loretta called. Answered this time. "Camille," she said, her voice gentle but filled with something heavier. "He's asking for you, Dad." "He's not well," she said. "He's lost everything. The stress. It's taken a toll. He's not the same." I sat in silence, staring at the skyline from my office window. The city looks so small from up here. "He wants to talk." He said he wants to explain. Explain. I repeated, the word sour in my mouth. "Loretta, I gave him 30 years to explain. He gave me name tags and silence." "I know, honey. No. But I also know what it does to a person to carry hate for too long." That night I sat with that thought. Did I hate him? I wasn't sure. Maybe once. But now I just felt tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but the kind that comes from being invisible for too long. I agreed to meet him. Not at the house. Not at some stuffy steakhouse with private rooms and wine flights. Chose the park. The same park he used to take me to when I was a child, before Margot, before it all changed. He was already sitting on the bench when I arrived. He looked smaller. The crisp navy suit was replaced by a cardigan. His face was lined, pale. But most striking of all, he looked at me, and for the first time in years he didn't look through me. He looked at me. "Camille," he said. "Thank you for coming." I sat down, a good 2 feet between us. "I'm not here for apologies." He nodded. "I figured." There was silence. The wind rustled through the trees. Children laughed in the distance. "I was a coward," he said. "I let someone else raise you. I let someone else decide your worth. And I was too weak to stop it." I didn't respond. "I watched what you did," he continued. "The way you exposed everything without a single press release. You didn't destroy the company. You gave it a chance to survive. Even after what I did to you. Still I said nothing. "Do you hate me?" he asked finally. I turned to him slowly. "No," I said, voice low. "I stopped hating you a long time ago. What I feel now is nothing. And that's worse, isn't it?" He swallowed hard. "Yes, it is." More silence. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a small velvet box. My pulse jumped. "I wanted to give this to you when you turned 18, he said. "It was your grandmother's. I kept it in the safe all these years. I told myself I'd give it to you when I made things right." He held it out. I didn't take it. Instead, I looked him in the eyes and said, "You can't buy redemption, Dad. Not with apologies. Not with jewelry. You've lost the right to call me your daughter. And I've lost the need for your validation." He nodded again, this time slower. "But," I added, "I'm not cruel. I won't destroy you even though I could. Not because you're my father, but because I won't become the monster you were to me." Then I stood. He looked down at the box in his hands. I walked away. I didn't turn back. That night, as I stood on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker like tiny stars, I felt something I never thought I'd feel again. Relief. The day after our meeting in the park, I received an envelope at my office. No return address. Inside was the velvet box. Still unopened. No note this time. Just the box. I didn't toss it. I didn't open it either. I placed it in the back of a drawer I rarely used, next to an old keychain my mother had given me in high school and a photo booth strip of me and Aunt Loretta laughing with cotton candy stuck in our teeth. That drawer was for things I couldn't throw away but couldn't look at either. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was done. And I thought that would be the end of it. But then came the lawsuit. Olivia filed it first against me. Claimed I had deliberately sabotaged her wedding and unfairly tarnished the family's reputation for personal gain. Her lawyer sent me a thick stack of nonsense about emotional damages, stress-related trauma, and reputational defamation. It would have been laughable if it weren't so pathetic. Then Max piled on. Separate suit. Similar claims. Said I had exploited insider knowledge to destabilize family operations for personal revenge. And finally Margot. Her lawsuit was the most venomous of all. She accused me of blackmail, slander, and malicious conspiracy. She had a new lawyer now. Young, flashy, and clearly desperate for headlines. They wanted blood. They wanted silence. What they didn't want was the truth. Unfortunately for them, I had it. In spades. I didn't panic. I didn't call any reporters or run to social media. Called my attorney Alex. He'd been with me since my first property deal, the kind of lawyer who said little and saw everything. He read through the paperwork silently, then leaned back with a single amused breath. "This is garbage," he said plainly. "But it's aggressive garbage. They want to drag your name through mud and force you into a settlement." "Let them try," I replied. And so we went to war. The depositions were brutal. Olivia sobbed theatrically in front of the camera, describing the humiliation of her wedding cancellation, completely ignoring the fact that the florist she used had been laundering money for Margot's consulting firm. Max painted himself as a confused son, unaware of the financial wrongdoings, blaming bad paperwork and pressure from Dad. Margot, though, she was calm, smiling like a movie villain. She said I had always been jealous, that I had been troubled since childhood, that I'd fabricated the documents to punish her for marrying my father. And every time they finished, I responded the same way. With evidence, receipts, emails, offshore bank statements, surveillance footage, phone transcripts. Had everything. But the moment that changed it all was when my mother testified. She hadn't wanted to. She hated being near them. Hated that she still shook when she saw Richard's signature on anything. But she came. She sat in that room with her weathered purse and her calloused hands. Hands that had cleaned homes and stocked shelves so I could eat, and told the court plainly how she'd saved every dollar for my college fund. How one day it was gone. "How did you find out?" the opposing counsel asked. "I didn't," she said. "My daughter did. She showed me the transaction history. The withdrawal was authorized by Richard Hartley. "And what did you do?" "I cried," she said. "Because I knew I couldn't fix it. And because I realized he'd chosen someone else's child over his own." That was the moment. The room changed. The jury shifted. The camera panned to Margot, and for once, she wasn't smiling. In the end, the judge dismissed Olivia and Max's suits for lack of standing and evidence. Margot's was another story. She'd perjured herself, falsified documents, lied under oath. Not only was her lawsuit dismissed, but she was charged with obstruction and fraud. Her assets were frozen within the month. Olivia's credit line vanished. Max's job offer was revoked. And Richard, he went silent. No press statements, no interviews, just silence. For the first time, the Hartleys couldn't buy their way out. And me. I didn't celebrate. I didn't throw a party or make a scene. I took my mother out to dinner. We went to a little Italian place she loved but hadn't visited in years because she said it felt too nice for someone like her. I watched her eat garlic bread and sip wine with a smile on her face I hadn't seen in decades. "You did it," she said. "No," I replied. "We did." After dinner, I walked her home and kissed her forehead like she used to do for me. And when I got home, I finally opened that drawer. I picked up the velvet box. Inside was a necklace. Simple. Silver. A small pendant with a tiny letter C in the center. Nothing extravagant. Just quiet. There was a folded note beneath it, barely the size of a business card. For the daughter I never stopped loving, even when I didn't know how to show it. I held the necklace in my hand for a long time, not crying, not raging, just remembering all the birthdays he missed. The ballet recitals I watched Olivia perform in while I sat backstage, uninvited. The long nights at campus cafes where I studied under flickering lights, hungry and exhausted, while Olivia shopped for designer notebooks and Max crashed internships through Dad's connections. Remembering what it cost me to become this woman. But also remembering the strength I'd gained, the voice I'd found, the peace I'd earned. The fallout from the lawsuits didn't just end quietly, it reshaped everything. Hartley Financial Holdings restructured under new leadership. The board wanted distance and fast. Richard's health resignation quickly morphed into permanent retirement. Margot's name was scrubbed from every public-facing partnership within weeks. Olivia and Max, once the golden heirs, found themselves blacklisted from the very circles they used to flaunt. They didn't see it coming. 'Cause people like them never do. They think protection is permanent. That the walls around them will always stand, no matter how many stones they pull from the foundation. But I had seen those cracks all my life. And I had learned how to build something better. I didn't bask in the scandal. I stayed quiet, dignified. But in the business world, silence speaks volumes. Word traveled quickly that I had orchestrated the most surgical takedown of one of the city's most untouchable families without ever stepping on a podium or leaking a statement. I was asked to speak at panels, to consult, teach. I said no to most of it, because I wasn't doing this for applause. I was doing it to reclaim something far deeper. A few weeks after Margot was formally indicted, I visited my old high school. The building was older now. Cracked tiles, faded banners in the gym. But the same smell in the hallways. Cheap cleaner and adolescent tension. Ms. Ramos was still there. My old counselor. The first adult who ever looked me in the eye and said, "You are more than what your father gives or takes away." She hugged me like no time had passed. "I saw you on the news," she said, smiling gently. "They said you destroyed them." I shook my head. I didn't destroy them. I let the truth in. The rest fell on its own. She nodded. "And you? Are you okay?" That question caught me off guard. I hadn't really stopped to ask myself. "I'm getting there," I said. "It's strange. I spent most of my life trying to be accepted by people who only saw me as a burden. And now that I've proven I never needed them, I'm not sure what comes next." Ms. Ramos tilted her head. "Maybe now you get to live for yourself." Smiled. "Maybe. Before I left, I wrote a check. Large one. I asked the school to create a scholarship in my mother's name. One specifically for students who had lost parental support due to divorce, estrangement, or abuse. A fund to help them find their footing the way I never could when mine was ripped out from under me. They cried when they saw the amount. I didn't. Felt clean. That night, back in my apartment, I did something else I hadn't done in a long time. I visited my mother's grave. I brought sunflowers, her favorite. I hadn't come since the funeral. Not because I didn't miss her, but because I wasn't ready. I knelt by the stone, ran my fingers over the name, Celeste Hartley, and let the silence speak. "Mom," I whispered, "I did it. Got everything back. And I made sure they could never take it from me again." The wind moved softly through the trees. I imagined she could hear me, and that she was proud. On the way home, I stopped by the building where Lucille used to be. The restaurant had gone bankrupt after the scandal. Clients canceled. Investors withdrew. It closed quietly one weekend, and the space had sat empty for months. I had the deed, of course. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. Dust danced in the air. The chandeliers were gone. The bar stripped bare. But the view was still there. That same skyline. Those same stars. And that same rooftop where Margot tried to reduce me to a joke. I walked to the center of the room, right where I had stood the night of the party. Where I had raised my glass and burned my bridges. It was poetic. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the silver necklace, the one from the velvet box. I hadn't worn it. I wasn't sure I ever would. But in that moment I took one last look at it, kissed the pendant softly, and placed it in the center of the floor. Then I turned away and walked out, locking the door behind me. I didn't need relics. Had memory. And I had closure. 6 months passed. In that time the city changed, or maybe I just saw it differently. The buildings looked less threatening. The skyline less imposing. The shadows that once loomed over me had finally lifted. I traveled. I read for pleasure again. I said yes to long dinners and no to things that drained me. I found joy in small things. Fresh cut flowers on my kitchen table, the smell of coffee at sunrise, an email from a young intern at my firm that simply read, "Thank you for showing me what resilience looks like." But most of all, I found peace in solitude. Until one morning I received a letter. From Richard. No lawyer. No official header. Just handwriting I hadn't seen since my childhood birthday cards, when he used to sign "Love, Dad" and draw little stars beside my name. It read, "Camille, I understand if you choose to tear this up without reading it. I wouldn't blame you. But if you're still reading, then thank you. I think about you every day now. Not because of what happened, but because of everything I didn't do before it. You asked me once why I never stood up for you. I've thought about that moment a lot. The truth is, I saw you becoming stronger without me. And I let that become an excuse to give you less. Failed you. Not just as a father, but as a man. I let Margot's poison infect my judgment. I let pride choke out love. I gave your future away to people who never earned it. And I stole what your mother tried to protect. There is no apology large enough to fit all that. But I want you to know, I see you now. And I am proud. Not of what you did to me, but of what you made of yourself without me. If you ever choose to forgive me, even silently, I'll carry that as the greatest gift of what's left of my life. If not, I understand. Either way, I'll always be your father. Even if only in shame. Richard. I read it once. Then again. And again. And then I folded it carefully, placed it in my desk drawer, and left it there. I didn't cry. I didn't call. I didn't need to. Forgiveness wasn't a moment. It was a process. One that had already begun, whether he knew it or not. But I wasn't going back. I had built my world. My truth. My voice. And that wasn't something I would ever surrender again. Not to a man, not to a memory, not even to guilt dressed as a second chance. A month later I launched my own foundation. Disowned, not defeated. A non-profit dedicated to supporting young women estranged from their families, offering scholarships, housing grants, therapy, and career guidance. Not charity but armor. The kind I never had. The day we opened our doors, a young girl named Maya stood in our lobby, holding everything she owned in a duffel bag. She had just turned 18. Her parents had thrown her out because she wanted to be an engineer instead of a nurse like her older sister. She had nowhere to go. I brought her tea, sat down beside her, and told her my story, or at least the pieces she needed to hear. By the time I finished, she whispered, "So, it gets better?" Smiled. "No," I said. "You get better. And then the world has to catch up." Later that night, I stood on the rooftop of our building, alone, the city glowing all around me. I wasn't Camille the disappointment anymore. I was Camille Hartley. Founder, survivor, builder, breaker of chains. And I was just getting started. Camille's story is one of quiet vengeance, not through destruction but through resilience. When you grow up invisible, your biggest triumph isn't making noise. It's being seen on your own terms. It's building a life so strong, no one else's name can take credit for it. Let this be a reminder. You are not who they say you are. You are who you decide to become. If this story spoke to you, share it. Someone out there might be standing in a room full of people who treat them like a disappointment, and they need to know. One day they can walk out and never look back. Subscribe to Revenge Echoes for more powerful, emotional stories like this. Comment below. Did Camille go too far? Or was this exactly what justice looks like? We'll let you decide.